Dr. Lisa Parker looked out the window of her lab on New Haven Colony. The morning sky was bright blue, just like Earth's sky. She smiled as she watched children playing in the garden below. Their laughter made her happy. After 3 years on this planet, it finally felt like home. New Haven was humanity's newest research colony. 50,000 people lived here now. They came from all over Earth to build a new life among the stars. Scientists like Lisa studied the strange plants and animals they found on this world. Farmers grew food in the rich soil. Teachers ran schools for the children. Everyone worked together to make their small piece of the galaxy better. Lisa turned back to her work. She was studying a flower that changed colors with the weather. It was beautiful and harmless, just like everything else they had found on New Haven. The planet was peaceful. No dangerous animals. No poisonous plants. It was perfect for humans. Captain Ryan Stone sat in his chair on the bridge of the TFS Liberty. His ship was one of 12 vessels that protected human space. The Terran Defense Fleet was small, but proud. They kept the peace and helped ships in trouble. Ryan had been a captain for 8 years. He had never fired his weapons in anger. The galaxy was mostly peaceful these days. The Galactic Council made sure of that. Different alien species worked together to solve problems. Humans had joined the Council 5 years ago. Everyone welcomed them with open arms. Or so it seemed. Ryan's communication officer looked up from her station. "Captain, we're getting a message from New Haven. Dr. Parker wants to speak with you." "Put her through," Ryan said. Lisa's face appeared on the main screen. She looked worried. "Captain Stone, we're seeing strange ships in our system. They're not human vessels. The computer can't identify them." Ryan frowned. "How many ships, Doctor?" "At least 20, maybe more. They're moving toward our planet." Lisa's voice was shaking now. "Captain, I don't think they're here to talk." Before Ryan could answer, the screen went dark. Static filled the speakers. Ryan's blood went cold. "Communications. Try to reach New Haven again." "No response, sir. I'm not getting anything from the colony." Meanwhile, on the planet below, Lisa ran through the halls of the research station. Alarms were screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere. She had seen the alien ships land. They were not like any vessels she had ever seen before. They were black and sharp, like knives cutting through the sky. The first explosions shook the building. Lisa fell to the floor as the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later. She got up and kept running. She had to reach the emergency broadcast station. Earth needed to know what was happening. The aliens were called Zephyrians. They ruled a large part of the galaxy through fear and violence. They had been watching humanity for years. They did not like what they saw. Humans were growing too fast, building too many colonies, making too many friends. The Zephyrians decided it was time to teach them a lesson. General Vex commanded the Zephyrian attack force. He was 7 feet tall, with gray skin and cold yellow eyes. He stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his soldiers destroy the human colony. His lips curved into what might have been a smile. "Make sure none of them escape," he told his officers. "The other humans must see what happens when they grow too bold." The Zephyrian soldiers were not just killing people. They were using special weapons that made death slow and painful. They wanted the humans to suffer. They wanted to send a message to all the other species in the galaxy. This is what happens when you challenge Zephyrian power. Lisa reached the broadcast station just as another explosion rocked the building. Her hands shook as she turned on the emergency transmitter. She only had minutes before the aliens found her. "This is Dr. Lisa Parker, on New Haven Colony," she said into the microphone. "We are under attack by unknown alien forces. They are not here to talk. They are here to kill us all." Tears ran down her face as she spoke. "The ships are Zephyrian. They're using weapons that ... that make people suffer before they die. Tell Earth. Tell everyone. We tried to be peaceful. We tried to be friends with everyone. But they don't want peace. They want us gone. The door behind her exploded inward. 3 Zephyrian soldiers stepped through the smoke. They were tall and covered in black armor. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Please, Lisa whispered into the microphone. Remember us. Remember what they did to us. Don't let them win. The transmission cut off. Admiral Jake Morrison was in his office on Earth when the message reached him. He was a strong man, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 wars before humans reached the stars. He thought those days were behind him. He listened to Lisa's message 3 times. Each time, his face grew harder. His hands closed into fists. When it was over, he sat in silence for a long moment. His aide, Commander Alina Rodriguez, stood nearby. She had tears in her eyes. Admiral, what do we do? Morrison stood up slowly. He walked to the window and looked out at the peaceful Earth sky. Somewhere out there, 50,000 humans had just died. Men, women, and children who had never hurt anyone, who had only wanted to build something beautiful among the stars. We call the President, Morrison said. His voice was quiet, but full of rage. And then we make sure this never happens again. 3 days later, the Galactic Council met to discuss the attack. Most of the alien representatives looked uncomfortable. They had known the Zephyrians were planning something. They had chosen to stay quiet. The Council's leader, a tall alien with blue skin, spoke into the silence. The Council has decided not to take action against the Zephyrian Empire. What happened on New Haven was regrettable, but it was an internal matter between 2 species. Alina Rodriguez sat in the human delegation's chair. She had been sent to represent Earth at this meeting. She listened to the alien's words with growing anger. Internal matter, she said, standing up. They murdered 50,000 innocent people. They used illegal weapons to make them suffer. And you call it an internal matter. The blue-skinned alien looked uncomfortable. The Zephyrians claim the humans were building weapons on New Haven. They had the right to defend themselves. Alina laughed, but there was no humor in it. We were growing flowers, teaching children, building homes. But you've already made up your minds, haven't you? You're afraid of them, so you let them do whatever they want. She gathered her papers and stood to leave. At the door, she turned back to face the Council. You could have stopped this. You could have saved those people. Instead, you chose to let bullies rule the galaxy. Well, congratulations. You just taught humanity that there's no justice out here, only power. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Back on Earth, President Matthew Blake read Elena's report. He set it down and looked around the room at his advisors. They all had the same expression on their faces, the same cold anger that was growing in human hearts across all the colonies. They want to play by those rules. Blake said quietly, "Fine. Let's show them what happens when they push humanity too far." The age of human peace was over. President Matthew Blake stood before the cameras in the White House. Behind him hung the flags of Earth and all 12 human colonies. His face was hard as stone. Every human in the galaxy was watching. "My fellow humans," he began. 3 days ago, we lost 50,000 of our brothers and sisters on New Haven. They were murdered by aliens who saw our peace as weakness. They were wrong. Blake paused and looked directly into the camera. The Galactic Council has chosen to do nothing. They say it was an internal matter. They are afraid to stand up to bullies. Well, if they won't protect the innocent, then we will. Across human space, people watched in silence. On Mars, workers stopped their machines. On the lunar cities, children stopped playing. On distant colonies, farmers put down their tools. Everyone listened. From this day forward, humanity will defend itself, Blake continued. We will not rely on others for our safety. We will not beg for justice from those who have none to give. We tried to be partners in this galaxy. Now we will be something else. Something they will remember. The broadcast ended. Within hours, the response began. General Kate Sullivan walked through the underground tunnels beneath Colorado. These tunnels had been secret for 20 years. Now they would save humanity. The signs on the walls read Project Midnight. Few people knew what that meant. Soon, everyone would. Sullivan stopped at a massive steel door. Her handprint opened the lock. Inside was a room full of computers and screens. Scientists and soldiers worked side by side. They had been preparing for this day since humans first reached the stars. Dr. Sam Watson looked up from his work. He was young but brilliant. His team had been studying alien weaknesses for years. General, the files are ready. We know how to hurt every species in the galaxy. Sullivan nodded. Show me. Watson pulled up files on his computer. The Zephyrians have 3 major weaknesses. Their ships use a fuel that explodes when mixed with hydrogen. Their armor can't handle certain sound frequencies. And their biology breaks down when exposed to Earth bacteria. What about the others? Sullivan asked. The blue-skinned Centauri rely on their computers for everything. Disrupt their networks and they're helpless. The Rigel species can't see in red light. The vegan empire uses quantum communication that we can jam. Watson smiled coldly. We've been watching them all, General. They taught us their secrets while thinking we were harmless. Sullivan walked to another section of the facility. Here, engineers worked on weapons and ships. These were not the peaceful vessels humans had built before. These were tools of war. Commander Alex Turner stood next to a sleek black ship. It was smaller than regular human vessels, but looked deadly. General, meet the Phantom-class fighter. Invisible to most alien sensors. Armed with weapons that adapt to whatever we're fighting. How many do we have? Sullivan asked. 1,000, with more being built every day. Every human world is contributing. They want revenge for New Haven. Turner was right. Across human space, the response was incredible. Peaceful farmers melted down their equipment to make weapons. Scientists shared their research freely. Teachers became drill instructors. Everyone wanted to help. On the colony world of Haven's Rest, Mayor Bob Chen organized his people. Haven's Rest was a farming world with only 10,000 people, but they were determined to help. We're sending half our young people to join the military, Chen announced to his council. The other half will grow food for the war effort. New Haven could have been us. We won't let it happen again. Similar scenes played out on every human world. The colony of New Texas sent its entire police force to become soldiers. The mining world of Kepler's Rock gave all its metal to build ships. The research station at Wolf 359 shared every piece of technology they had. Back on Earth, Admiral Morrison worked 18 hours a day. His office was filled with plans and reports. The Terran defense fleet was growing fast. Too fast for comfort, but not fast enough for revenge. Captain Ryan Stone knocked on Morrison's door. He looked older than his years. The loss of New Haven had hit him hard. He blamed himself for not being there to help. Admiral, the new ships are ready for testing, Stone reported. Morrison looked up from his papers. How many? 50 warships, all armed with the new adaptive weapons. All crewed by volunteers who lost family on New Haven. Morrison nodded. And the special project. Stone's face grew dark. Complete. We have 10 ships that can crack a planet's crust. Dr. Watson calls them world breakers. Morrison was quiet for a moment. I hope we never have to use them. So do I, sir. But if we do, the galaxy will understand that humanity is not to be trifled with. Meanwhile, in space near Jupiter, the largest construction project in human history was taking place. Thousands of workers labored around the clock. They were building something new. Something terrible. The TFS Retribution was humanity's first true battleship. It was 5 miles long and bristled with weapons. Its armor was made from materials found on a dozen worlds. Its computers held the knowledge of every alien species humanity had ever met. Captain Maria Santos walked through the ship's corridors. She had been chosen to command this monster. Every step she took reminded her why she was here. New Haven, 50,000 dead, a galaxy that chose to look the other way. Captain, her first officer called. The weapon systems are online, all green across the board. Santos nodded, and the crew, volunteers from every human world. They're angry, Captain. They want blood. Santos understood. She wanted blood too, but she was a professional. She would channel that anger into something useful, something effective. On the bridge, she looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrians were celebrating their victory. They thought they had taught humanity a lesson. They thought wrong. Dr. Paul Griffin worked in his lab on Luna. He was creating something that would change warfare forever. Adaptive armor that could protect against any weapon. Shields that grew stronger under attack. Weapons that learned how to kill their targets better. The first batch is ready, he told his assistant. Send it to the training centers. The training centers were another new thing. On a dozen worlds, humans learned how to fight aliens. They studied Zephyrian tactics. They practiced with captured alien weapons. They learned to think like predators instead of prey. Colonel Ben Harris ran the largest training center on Mars. He had been a teacher before New Haven. Now he taught a different kind of lesson. Listen up. He shouted at a group of new recruits. The aliens think we're soft. They think we'll cry and give up after one bloody nose. They're about to learn how wrong they are. The recruits were young, but their eyes were hard. Many had lost friends or family on New Haven. All of them wanted revenge. We're not just going to fight back, Harris continued. We're going to make them regret ever hearing the word human. We're going to teach them that attacking innocent people has consequences. One recruit raised her hand. Lieutenant Amy Foster was only 22, but she had the eyes of a killer. Colonel, when do we start? Harris smiled. It was not a nice smile. Tomorrow, Foster. Tomorrow we start showing the galaxy what happens when you push humanity too far. As the weeks passed, reports came in from across human space. The military was growing faster than anyone had thought possible. Ships were being built in record time. Weapons that had only existed in theory were becoming reality. But the most important change was in the people themselves. Humans who had spent their lives studying flowers were now studying how to destroy alien worlds. Teachers were learning to train soldiers. Farmers were learning to feed armies. The galaxy had made a mistake. They had assumed that peaceful humans would stay peaceful when attacked. They had forgotten that humans had fought their way to the top of Earth's food chain. They had forgotten that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their ships. It was their ability to adapt, to change, to become whatever they needed to be to survive. The Zephyrians had wanted to teach humanity a lesson about power. They were about to learn one themselves. 6 months had passed since New Haven burned. The galaxy barely recognized humanity anymore. The peaceful explorers were gone. In their place stood something harder, something dangerous. Colonel Ben Harris watched his soldiers train in the red dust of Mars. These were not the same people who had signed up months ago. They moved like predators now, quick and silent, deadly. Lieutenant Amy Foster led her squad through a combat exercise. They were practicing how to board alien ships, how to take them apart from the inside, how to turn the enemy's own technology against them. Remember, Foster called to her team, Zephyrian ships have weak points here and here. She pointed to spots on a holographic display. Hit them right, and the whole ship goes dark. Then it's just us and them in the dark, and we fight better in the dark. Harris nodded with approval. Foster was his best student. She had lost her brother on New Haven. The grief had turned into something cold and focused, something that would serve humanity well. Across the solar system, Similar scenes played out on every world. Jupiter's moons had become weapons factories. Saturn's rings hid new shipyards. Even tiny Pluto now hosted a military base. Dr. Paul Griffin stood in his new laboratory on Titan. Around him, machines built things that had never existed before. Armor that could stop any alien weapon. Shields that turned enemy fire into power for human ships. Weapons that adapted to whatever they faced. The molecular disruptors are ready, his assistant reported. They'll tear apart Zephyrian hull plating, like paper. Griffin nodded. And the biological weapons? Complete. We can target specific alien species without harming humans. The Zephyrians wanted to use biology against us. Now they'll learn we're better at it. Griffin felt no guilt about creating such weapons. The Zephyrians had crossed a line when they tortured innocent people. Now humanity would cross whatever lines it needed to win. On Earth, President Blake met with his top advisors. The room was filled with tension. Intelligence reports covered the table. The news was not good. The Zephyrians are planning something big, reported Director Steve Mitchell. He ran humanity's new intelligence service. Our spies say they're building a massive fleet. They want to finish what they started. General Sullivan leaned forward. How massive? 500 ships. Maybe more. They're calling it the Final Solution Fleet. Mitchell's voice was grim. They plan to attack Earth itself. They want to end the human problem permanently. Blake was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was a cold, terrible smile. Let them come. We'll be ready. Admiral Morrison stood up. Sir, are you sure? 500 ships is more than our entire fleet. Admiral, Blake said softly, show them what we've really been building. Morrison activated a holographic display. It showed ship designs that made everyone in the room go quiet. These were not defensive vessels. These were weapons of total war. The TFS Retribution is just the beginning, Morrison said. We have 50 ships like her now. But these, ... He pointed to new designs. These are planet killers, world breakers, ships that can crack moons in half. The room was silent. Finally, Blake spoke. The Zephyrians want to play for keeps. Fine, we'll play for keeps. But when this is over, they'll understand that humanity doesn't just fight back. We fight to win, completely. Meanwhile, in deep space, the TFS Retribution moved through the darkness. Captain Maria Santos stood on her bridge, watching her crew work. They were no longer the peaceful explorers who had first reached for the stars. They were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. Captain, her weapons officer reported, the new quantum torpedoes are loaded. Each one can level a city. Santos nodded. And the adaptive shields. Online and learning. Every piece of intelligence we have about Zephyrian weapons has been programmed in. We'll be ready for whatever they throw at us. Santos walked to the forward viewport. Out there, somewhere, the Zephyrians were preparing for war, they thought. They knew what humans were capable of. They were wrong. On the colony world of New Texas, the entire population was preparing for war. Men and women who had been farmers and ranchers 6 months ago, now drilled with military precision. Their leader was a tough woman named Carol Davis. She had been a school principal before, New Haven. Now she commanded a planetary defense force. Listen up, people, Davis called to her volunteers. Intelligence says the Zephyrians might hit us. Next. They think we'll run. They think we'll beg for mercy, like other species do. The crowd murmured angrily. These people had seen the videos from New Haven. They knew what Zephyrian mercy looked like. Well, we're not other species, Davis continued. We're humans, and humans don't run. We don't beg, we fight, and we win. The crowd roared its approval. These farmers and teachers and shopkeepers had become soldiers in their hearts. They would make the Zephyrians pay for every inch of ground back on Earth. In the secret facilities beneath Colorado, Scientists worked on humanity's most terrible weapons. These were not for fighting ships or soldiers. These were for ending entire civilizations. Dr. Watson looked at his latest creation with mixed feelings. It was a virus designed specifically for Zephyrian biology. It would spread through their population in weeks, kill them all in months, leave their worlds empty but intact. Are you sure about this, Doctor? His assistant asked. Using biological weapons, it makes us like them. Watson was quiet for a moment. No, he said finally. It makes us survivors. They started this war with bioweapons. They tortured innocent people. Now they get to learn what happens when you fight a species that's smarter than you are. Across human space, similar preparations continued. Every world contributed. Every person helped. The peaceful civilization that had reached for the stars was transforming into something else. Something that would ensure humanity's survival, no matter the cost. The Zephyrians had made a simple mistake. They had assumed that because humans wanted peace, they were incapable of war. They had confused kindness with weakness, mercy with cowardice. They were about to learn the difference in the outer system. Beyond Pluto, humanity's secret weapon neared completion. It was not a ship or a weapon in the traditional sense. It was something else entirely. Something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The Stellar Forge was humanity's greatest engineering project. It could turn asteroids into fleets of ships in days instead of years. It could build weapons too terrible to imagine. It could create armies out of raw matter. Commander Turner stood before the massive structure and smiled. The Zephyrians thought they understood human technology. They thought they knew what humanity was capable of. They had no idea. Sir, his aide reported, the forge is online. We can begin mass production whenever you give the order. Turner nodded. Send word to Earth. Tell the President we're ready. Tell him it's time to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity. As reports flooded in from across human space, one thing became clear. The species that had once dreamed of peaceful exploration among the stars was gone. In its place stood something harder. Something that had learned the galaxy's real rules and decided to play by them. The Zephyrians had wanted to teach humanity about power, about fear, about the cost of challenging those who ruled through violence. They were about to get the most important lesson of their lives. A lesson about what happened when you pushed too far. When you mistook mercy for weakness. When you attacked those who had done nothing but tried to build something beautiful in the darkness. Humanity was ready for war. Real war. Total war. And the galaxy would never be the same. The war began at exactly 0600 Earth Standard Time, across 12 Zephyrian star systems. Human ships dropped out of hyperspace simultaneously. The attack was coordinated down to the second. There was no warning, no demand for surrender, no mercy. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the TFS Retribution as it emerged near the Zephyrian homeworld. Around him, 50 other warships appeared in flashes of light. The enemy fleet was caught completely off guard. All ships. This is Admiral Morrison. He broadcast on an open channel. You are watching the price of murdering innocents. Remember, New Haven. Remember what you did to 50,000 peaceful people. This is what justice looks like. The Zephyrian response was immediate but confused. Their ships scattered like frightened animals. They had expected humanity to negotiate, to beg, to act like every other species they had bullied into submission. They had not expected this. Captain Ryan Stone commanded the TFS Vengeance in the Kepler system. His target was a major Zephyrian military base. As his ship's weapons came online, he thought about Dr. Lisa Parker, about her final message, about the children who had died screaming on New Haven. All weapons, fire at will, he ordered. Show them what humans do to child killers. The Vengeance unleashed hell. New quantum torpedoes tore through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper. Adaptive plasma cannons adjusted their frequency in real time, making enemy armor useless. The military base that had taken decades to build was destroyed in minutes. But the ships were only part of humanity's assault. As the space battle raged, transport vessels landed on Zephyrian worlds. From them came something the galaxy had never seen before. Human ground forces designed specifically for total war. Colonel Ben Harris led the assault on Zephyr Prime, the enemy homeworld. His soldiers moved through the alien city like a force of nature. They wore adaptive armor that shifted to counter whatever weapons the Zephyrians used. They carried guns that learned how to kill more efficiently with every shot. "Remember the training," Harris called to his troops as they advanced. "These are the same species that tortured our people. Show them the same mercy they showed New Haven." The Zephyrian defenders had never faced anything like this. Other species they had conquered fought defensively. They tried to minimize casualties. They followed rules of war. Humans did none of those things. Lieutenant Amy Foster led her squad through a Zephyrian command center. The aliens inside surrendered immediately, expecting to be taken prisoner like soldiers from other species. Foster looked at them with cold eyes. "You should have thought about surrender before you attacked New Haven," she said. Then she gave her squad the signal to continue their mission. The Zephyrians learned quickly that humanity did not take prisoners. Not in this war. Not after what had been done to innocent civilians. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. Human forces struck with overwhelming power and no restraint. Ships that had taken years to build were destroyed in hours. Bases that had stood for centuries were reduced to rubble. The Zephyrian Empire, built over thousands of years, crumbled in days. But the humans were not just destroying. They were sending a message. Every attack was broadcast across the galaxy. Every Zephyrian defeat was shown to every species that belonged to the Galactic Council. The message was simple. This is what happens when you mistake human kindness for weakness. General Vex, the Zephyrian commander who had destroyed New Haven, found himself trapped on his flagship as human ships surrounded him. He had expected an easy victory when he attacked the peaceful colony. He had expected humanity to beg for mercy from the Galactic Council. He had not expected this nightmare. "Human vessel," he broadcast desperately. "We surrender. We will negotiate terms of peace." The response came from Admiral Morrison himself. "You had your chance for peace. You chose war. You chose to torture innocents. Now you get to learn what war really means when you fight a species that's better at it than you are." The Retribution's main gun spoke once. Vex's flagship became a cloud of expanding plasma. Meanwhile, the other species of the galaxy watched in horror and fascination. The Galactic Council emergency session was chaos. Representatives argued and shouted, but no one seemed to know what to do. The blue-skinned Centauri who led the council called for order. "The humans must be stopped," he declared. "This level of violence is unacceptable." That was when Alina Rodriguez arrived. She entered the council chamber with a smile that made everyone go quiet. Behind her came a dozen human soldiers in full combat armor. They had not been invited, but no one tried to stop them. "Unacceptable," Alina said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Where was this concern when 50,000 humans were being tortured to death? Where was this outrage when the Zephyrians used illegal bioweapons on children? The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had no answer. "You had your chance to provide justice," Alina continued. "You chose to protect bullies instead of innocents. So now humanity provides its own justice. And we're very good at it." She activated a holographic display that showed the battle raging across Zephyrian space. Ships burning, cities falling, an empire dying. "This is what real consequences look like," she said. "The Zephyrians wanted to teach us about power. We're teaching them about what happens when you use that power against The innocent? One of the council members, a tall reptilian alien, stood up. The humans must be controlled. They're too dangerous to be left alone. Elena's smile grew wider. Too dangerous. 6 months ago, we were growing flowers and teaching children. You? Let bullies destroy that. Now you complain when we become something harder, something that can protect itself. She looked around the chamber at the frightened faces. Every species in this room could have prevented this war. All you had to do was stand up to the Zephyrines. Instead, you let them murder innocents because you were afraid. Elena's expression grew cold. Well, now you know what there is to be afraid of, and it's not the Zephyrians anymore. Back in the war zone, human forces pressed their advantage. They were not just winning, they were demonstrating total superiority. Every Zephyrian tactic was countered. Every weapon was useless against human technology. Dr. Griffin's adaptive systems were working perfectly. Human armor evolved in real time to stop enemy weapons. Human shields grew stronger under attack. Human guns learned to kill more efficiently with every shot fired. The Zephyrians began to panic. Some tried to flee to other star systems. Human ships followed them. Some tried to hide on their worlds. Human soldiers found them. Some tried to surrender to other alien species. No one would help them. Captain Santos watched from her bridge as the last Zephyrian orbital fortress exploded. Her ship's weapons had barely been tested. The enemy had offered no real resistance. Captain, her communications officer reported, "We're getting surrender broadcasts from across the system. Every Zephyrian commander is offering to negotiate." Santos was quiet for a moment. She thought about New Haven, about Dr. Parker's final message, about the children who had died in agony while these same Zephyrians watched. "Tell them," she said, finally, "that they should have thought about surrender before they started torturing children. Continue the attack." The final phase of the assault began. Human forces that had been holding back now revealed their true capabilities. World-breaker weapons that could crack planets. Stellar bombs that could destroy entire star systems. Biological weapons designed to target specific alien species. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity demonstrated what total war really meant. This was not conquest for territory or resources. This was not even revenge in the traditional sense. This was extinction. The Zephyrian Empire died in 6 days. 6 days to destroy a civilization that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years. 6 days to teach every species watching what happened when you pushed humanity beyond its limits. When it was over, human ships held position in empty space where Zephyrian worlds had once existed. The empire that had seemed so powerful was gone. Not defeated, not conquered. Erased. Admiral Morrison sent one final broadcast to the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire chose to use violence against innocent humans. They chose to torture children. They chose war with a species that wanted only peace. He paused, looking directly into the camera. They learned that humanity remembers. We remember every innocent life lost. We remember every act of cruelty. And we make sure those responsible never forget the cost of such choices. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, alien leaders sat in stunned silence. They had thought they understood power. They had thought they knew what warfare meant. They had been wrong. Humanity had shown them something new, something terrible, something that would change the galaxy forever. The age of bullies, ruling through fear, was over. The age of human consequences had begun. 1 year after the Zephyrian Empire ceased to exist, the galaxy was a very different place. The empty star systems where their worlds had been served as monuments to a simple truth. Attacking human civilians had consequences. President Blake stood before the cameras once again. But this time, his audience was not just humanity. Every species in the galaxy was listening. They had no choice. "When we first reached for the stars," Blake began, "we came in peace. We offered friendship to all. We met. We believed in the dream of different species working together to build something better. His expression hardened. We were naive. We thought everyone shared our values. We thought the strong would protect the weak. We thought justice meant something to those who ruled through fear. Blake paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy. We were wrong, so we learned to protect ourselves. We learned to be strong enough that no one would mistake our kindness for weakness ever again. The broadcast switched to show human fleets patrolling the galaxy, massive ships that moved with purpose and power. The peaceful exploration vessels were gone, replaced by instruments of controlled destruction. Today, I announced the formation of the Human Protection Authority, Blake continued. Every human world will be defended by humans. Every human ship will be escorted by humans. And any species that threatens human civilians will learn what the Zephyrians learned in the empty space where the Zephyrian homeworld had once existed. Admiral Morrison commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled. Around him, 1,000 ships held formation. Each one carried enough firepower to level a continent. The message was clear, without being spoken. This is what happens to those who forget the lesson of New Haven. General Sullivan, now Supreme Military Commander of all human forces, walked through the halls of the new command center on Luna. The facility was massive, coordinating human military operations across 100 star systems. Status report, she ordered as she entered the main operations center. Director Mitchell looked up from his displays. All monitoring stations are operational. We have eyes on every major alien world. Early warning systems are active throughout known space. Sullivan nodded. The galaxy would never again catch humanity off guard. Never again would innocent humans die because their protectors were looking the other way. Any new threats? 3 minor species have made aggressive statements about human expansion. We're monitoring them closely. Sullivan's expression grew cold. Remind them what happened to the last species that threatened humans. If they need a more direct lesson, we can provide one. Mitchell smiled grimly. Already done, General. They've gone very quiet since receiving our historical documentary about the Zephyrian War. Across the galaxy, the effects of humanity's new doctrine were being felt everywhere. Species that had once bullied smaller civilizations now thought twice before acting. The memory of 6 days that changed everything hung over every decision. Ambassador Carol Davis stood before the reformed Galactic Council. The chamber was different now. Human ships orbited every council world. Human soldiers stood guard at every meeting. The galaxy's new reality was impossible to ignore. The council recognizes the human representative, said the blue-skinned Centauri leader. His voice was much more respectful than it had been a year ago. Davis smiled politely. Thank you. Humanity has a simple announcement to make. Any species that attacks human civilians will be removed from existence. Any species that aids such attacks will be removed from existence. Any species that fails to report knowledge of such planned attacks will be held responsible. The chamber was silent. Every alien representative understood what they were hearing. Humanity was not negotiating. They were stating facts. Furthermore, Davis continued, humanity will now take an active role in protecting other peaceful species from aggression. We learned what happens when good people do nothing while bullies rule. We will not allow that to happen again. The implications were staggering. Humanity was not just protecting itself. It was reshaping the entire galactic order. On the former Zephyrian colony world of Zarian, something unprecedented was happening. Human engineers and scientists were rebuilding. But they were not building human settlements. They were creating something new. Captain Santos, now Governor Santos, oversaw the project personally. The world would become a memorial to New Haven, a place where beings from across the galaxy could come to understand what had happened and why. The museum is almost complete, reported her aide. Delegations from 50 species have requested permission to visit. Santos nodded. Make sure they see everything. Make sure they understand that this was not about conquest or empire. This was about justice, about protecting the innocent. The memorial would tell the complete story, how peaceful humans had been murdered, how the galaxy had chosen to do nothing, how humanity had been forced to become something harder to survive. Most importantly, it would show what happened when a species forgot the lessons of history. Back on Earth, life had changed dramatically. Children still played in parks, but they also learned about the galaxy's real nature in school. Teachers still taught literature and mathematics, but they also taught military history and strategic thinking. Lieutenant Amy Foster, now Captain Foster, trained new recruits at the academy on Mars. These young people had grown up knowing the truth about the galaxy. They were harder than the generation that had first reached for the stars, but they were also more determined to protect what humanity had built. Remember, she told her students, we are not the same species that begged the Galactic Council for justice. We are not the same people who thought others would protect the innocent. We learned to protect ourselves. We learned to be strong enough that our enemies fear to test us. One student raised her hand. Captain, some people say we went too far, that destroying an entire species was wrong. Foster was quiet for a moment. She thought about her brother, who had died on New Haven, about the children who had been tortured by Zephyrian bioweapons, about the galaxy that had chosen to do nothing. Those people, she said finally, never had to watch footage of what the Zephyrians did to innocents. They never had to listen to the final transmissions from New Haven. They never had to learn. That peace only exists when good people are strong enough to defend it. Foster looked around the classroom at the young faces watching her. We are those strong people now, and the galaxy is more peaceful because of it. She was right. Across known space, species that had once solved disputes through violence now chose negotiation. The fear of drawing human attention had a wonderfully pacifying effect on would-be aggressors. Dr. Griffin, now head of human defense technology, continued his work on ever more advanced systems. But his new projects were different. Where once he had created weapons of destruction, now he built tools of deterrence. The new early warning network is complete, he reported to President Blake. We can detect hostile fleet movements from 1,000 light-years away. Any species planning aggression against humans or their allies will be identified immediately. Blake nodded. And our response capability. We can deploy overwhelming force to any point in the galaxy within 72 hours. No one will ever again catch humanity unprepared. Blake looked out the window of his office at the peaceful Earth sky. Children were playing in the parks below. People walked safely through cities. Farmers grew crops in fields that would never again be threatened by alien invasion. The price of that peace had been high. An entire species had been erased from existence. Humanity had become something harder, more dangerous than it had ever been. But those children playing below would never know the fear that had gripped their parents after New Haven. They would never have to wonder if some alien empire might decide to end human civilization on a whim. They were safe, and they would stay safe. 5 years after the war ended, something remarkable happened. A new species was discovered at the edge of known space. They were peaceful explorers, much like humans had once been. When aggressive neighbors threatened them, something unprecedented occurred. The galaxy's established powers stepped in to protect them, without being asked, without hesitation, because everyone remembered what happened when peaceful people were left to face bullies alone. The lesson of New Haven had been learned. The price of forgetting it had been demonstrated. The galaxy was safer because humanity had refused to let evil go unpunished. In schools across human space, children learned the complete story, how their species had reached for the stars with open hands and peaceful hearts, how that peace had been met with violence and cruelty, how their parents and grandparents had been forced to become something harder to survive. The final lesson was always the same: peace is not the absence of war. Peace is what happens when good people are strong enough to protect the innocent. Humanity had learned that lesson in fire and blood. They had taught it to the galaxy in ways that would never be forgotten. The stars belonged to those brave enough to reach for them, but now they also knew that those same stars belonged to those strong enough to defend what they had built among them. The age of human consequences was eternal. The galaxy was better for it, and somewhere in the empty space where New Haven had once existed, a simple monument bore the names of 50,000 innocents. Below their names, carved in stone that would last forever, were the words that had changed everything. They provoked us. Now we ensure it never happens again. The galaxy had learned. Humanity made sure of it.